Good evening, everyone. Flávio is already here. Cristiane, Adriana. So we are once again back to our monthly um, night of Spiritism in English. Our our series of public talks about Spiritism in English and continue, usually every second Monday of the month. Last month we couldn't do it on the second Monday, so we did it on the third Monday. But now we're back to second Mondays once again tonight with our dear friend Flávio Zanetti. And before we start, we'd like to do an initial prayer, and then we're going to read a message from the book Our Daily Bread, do a brief comment on it, and then we will invite Flávio to give his talk about the sacrifice most agreeable to God. So if you want, let's close our eyes so that we can connect even deeper with our dear Father, our Creator, our friend, Jesus, and the good spirits that help us all the way throughout our lives, saying, Dear Father, Mother, Creator God, we are here once again at this little spot of light, together around the good news of the gospel that helps us to understand your laws, the laws of love, of charity, of progress, so that we can, with your help, with the help of these good spirits, understand them, not only with our minds, but most importantly, with our hearts, feeling the message deep inside ourselves for us to learn how to practice them in our daily lives. So it is with a heart full of gratefulness that we thank you for all the help that you've been sending to us in this life, in this opportunity to be here on earth once again. So may your love, your patience, and your harmony be with us today and forever. So be it. So let's read the message 134 from this book, Our Daily Bread. I'm just going to change the screen here on the computer for those who are watching us at home, and I'll be right back. So for those who are online, you see the book right here. For those who aren't online, you see the book right here. Uh, so, so our daily bread from Chico Xavier and the Spirit Emmanuel. This book is part of the Living Spring collection. There are 4 books in this collection, actually 5 books in this collection, and you can find the messages online. You can buy the book online on Amazon, and read. There are 180 messages on each of these books. And the last one that was added later on, I don't know if it has translation yet. It's called Ceifa de Luz in Portuguese. They added it to the collection. It's only, I think, 60 messages. But nevertheless, let's go to Spiritual Nutrition. That's the title of this message, 134. And Emmanuel takes a small passage from Paul, from the letter of Paul to the Hebrews, message chapter 13, item number 9, verse number 9, where Paul says to them, "It is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace instead of dainties, which are of no value to anyone who indulges in them." Paul to the Hebrews. So Emmanuel makes the following comment. There are nutritional vices of the soul, just as there are nutritional vices of the body. Many people trade pure water for stimulating beverages, just as many people prefer pernicious illusion when dealing with spiritual problems. In order to be effective for the eternal life, nourishment for the heart has to be based on the simple realities of the evolutionary path. It is crucial for us to strengthen ourselves with illuminative principles without heeding the dazzling fantasies that come from the outside. It is precisely on the religious path that such effort demands broader refinement. Generally speaking, believers are always eager for situations that can satisfy their pernicious whims, just like a gourmet yearns for exotic dishes. However, just as delights of the table are not necessary for fundamental activities, the thrilling sensations of spirit phenomena are useless to the soul if it does not possess sufficient inner resources to understand their purpose. Many disciples regard their religious experience as a purely intellectual matter, but it is crucial to realize that in order to be definitely incorporated, the nourishment of the soul requires a heart that is sincerely interested in the divine truths. When individuals assume this inner attitude, they truly strengthen themselves for sublimation. They realize that there is such an abundance of useful work material around them that they place any temporary sensation on the lowest rungs of the evolutionary ladder. When I read this message for the first time, the first image that comes to mind is Allan Kardec. Um, because when Emmanuel says here that um, in this last paragraph, he says that some people, or when he talks about people that come either to the Spiritist Center or to a church, to a temple, or whatever, if they cling, if they hold on only to the exterior aspects of the faith, it can bring us something. And then he makes this comparison with people that go around looking for exotic dishes, like dishes that have all these I don't know, fancy stuff, but when you really try to get to the end of it, it doesn't have enough nutritional value to it. So if you like a lot of, for example, white bread, not that it's not good, it is good. I love white bread. However, if you compare white bread with a whole wheat bread, it has it fills you up almost as much as the other one, but it doesn't have fiber, it doesn't have a lot of good stuff into it. So we're lacking, we have the exterior part, but we don't have the interior part of it. So and why did I remember Kardec when I read this? Because in the beginning, when he started studying Spiritism, not Spiritism, when he started studying the phenomena that was happening in Paris around that time, he was looking at those as at those things, and he was thinking, why do I have to go after this entertainment? Because that's what people used to see on those turning tables phenomena at the time. And he got intrigued because someone said to him, hey, apparently these tables are answering questions. And he said, hey, that there must be something behind this. But then all of a sudden, he realizes that there must be something behind those tables. And then he gets interested in seeing what is behind this. Can I take something from it? So he goes and studies that. And then he realizes that it's not just about realizing that there are people or there is something behind it. It's realizing that there are living people behind it. And what is the consequence of learning that behind all those turning tables and all those answers that were being given by the questions that he was posing or other people were posing? So the tables are answering the questions, and he started thinking, okay, so if there are spirits, and then he comes up with this idea that there are spirits, people that died, he said, oh, all of a sudden, something clears up in my mind and says, oh, this must be serious. Because if I survive when I die, there is a problem right there. Because people, and even us spiritists sometimes, we think that we don't even think that much, but maybe we are doing stuff and then we don't realize that everything that we do has a consequence, not only to this life, but to after. So if he were just taking the idea of mediumship just for pleasure, just for something external, then we're not taking that message as something that has spiritual nourishment. And that's what Kardec did. He does not study, or he did not study Spiritism and created this whole body of knowledge just for our intellectual satisfaction, just for us to know and spread it out and say, oh, I have the truth, I know the truth, I know what it is. No, it's for us to take the message, understand it, and live the message. And so when Emmanuel makes this comment, um, that's what I thought of as soon as I finished reading the message. I thought of Kardec like taking something that everybody around him looked at just as a simple thing for them to get out at night and go to and watch these tables circle around, jump, and they were making fun of it and maybe answering like quick questions about all these unimportant things just for fun. And then Kardec looks at it and then he says, hey, this is serious. There's much more inside of it. So let's go inside and take the best that we can, that I can from this, and by knowing him and by reading what he wrote, by knowing a little bit of what he was, not only after that but before that as well, knowing how much he improved himself, how much he did not only for him but for his family, for people around him, we know that he nourished himself spiritually a lot from what he learned. And fortunately, he left for us a lot of spiritual nourishment as well. So this is message 134 from Our Daily Bread. This is my take on it, but there are very, very interesting thoughts that Emmanuel gives us here. So I recommend the reading and reflection again on message 134 from the book Our Daily Bread by Emmanuel and Chico Xavier. And with this, let's invite our dear friend Flavio, who agreed to be with us once again to talk to the sacrifice most agreeable to God. I'll change the image right here in a few seconds. Flavio, take it away.
Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. For those who are here following us live, and for those of you who are following us through the internet, it's with great joy. It's with my heart filled with gratitude that I accepted the invitation once again to be with you guys. This time, or tonight specifically, talking about the sacrifice most agreeable by God or to God. Before we start, we'd like to keep our thoughts raised to our Professor Jesus, to that one that he came for us, that he stayed for us, and he's here with us. Because if you remember, two or more people gathered in thy name, there he will be. And we were pretty sure that he is here with us tonight. So we ask for his guidance, we ask for his wisdom. May we pass on the message with the same dedication, with the same interest through which we put together in order to prepare that for you guys. And with such, we also like to thank our dear friend Mackenzie for the invitation, our friends from the Spiritist Center here who are with us, and those who are following us through the internet. So, sacrifice most agreeable to God. Every time we look at the word sacrifice, what comes to mind? Every time we look at the word sacrifice, what comes to mind? A lot of things for a lot of people, to a lot of people, but very commonly we see a trend when we look at the word sacrifice. For example, right? We look at pain. That's probably the first one. Oh, that's a sacrifice. It's gonna be painful for me to get there. Oh my God, what a sacrifice for me to pass the test. What a painful experience that I have to go through in order for me to pass the test. Oh, what a sacrifice to get my driver's license. Oh my God, I have to study a lot, practice a lot, win my fears, overcome the pain sometimes. So the first word that comes to mind is pain. We know that. The second word that comes to mind is suffering. Oh, I'm going to suffer throughout the test because 2 hours of my life, I'm going to be miserable filling up the questions in order to pass that test. For 3 months, as I prepare for my driver's license test, I'm going to be miserable until that happens. So the suffering that has or that sits behind the word sacrifice, and also the word sacred comes behind sacrifice. Interestingly enough, if you look at the meaning, right, the etymological definition of the word sacrifice, it comes from the Latin sacrificium, which is a combination of two words, sacrum and facere. Sacrum means sacred, and facere means to make things. So the translation, the literal translation of the word sacrifice is to make things sacred. So if you look at that, what is the things that we have to do to make ourselves sacred so that's going to be pleasing to God? That's how a question we see or translate. But because sacrifice is very commonly associated with pain, let's talk about pain a little bit. Because guess what, right? We live in a world of trials and expiations, and there's still a lot of pain everywhere. We look to the left, we look at the right. There's pain when we turn on the television, when we read the news. There's pain. Seems like there's pain everywhere. When you take a look at pain in a little deeply meaning, can we say or can we please God with our suffering? Do we think that God is happy when he sees us suffering? Do we? Do we think that God is pleased when we are in pain? Do we think that when people do these penitence, activities, so for example, this young girl is walking for 17 miles to really, demonstrate her love for God. When you look at this other woman, she's walking in her knees in Ecuador, I think it's Ecuador, for several kilometers to show her, adherence to God's laws and really to pay some of the penitence. When you look at this young adult here in Brazil, we see him crossing the bridge to get to a popular destination where folks do a lot of penitences. So, do we think that God is pleased when we, carry out these activities? Do we think that He's happy when these things happen to us? If we look at a God that is a punitive one, right, we could have tried to understand in that scenario. But if we look at God as a parent, if we look at God as someone that has, multiple children all over the world, all over the universe, do we as parents like to see our kids suffering? And if you are a parent watching us right now, would you like to see your kids, your children suffering? Probably not. Correct? So, if God is the ultimate parent, much more advanced than we are, we can only assume that these things are not going to please God. But why do people still make or carry out these activities? Why do folks continue to do this? Because they don't see God, or they see God instead as someone that appreciates these things, but they don't see God as when we try to put a metal device in an electrical, outlet, automatically, if that child continues with that activity, he or she is probably going to get electrocuted, and there's going to be some pain. There's going to be a spark and things like that. But God instead is a teacher. So it's the one that tells you know what? Don't do this. Because it's not going to be good for you if you do this. Don't put that metal object in the electrical, outlet, because that's not going to be good to you. But if we insist, and if we try it again, if we go over again and over and over and over and over, God is a teacher. God's going to try to help us, but ultimately we all have our free will. And if we continue not listening to the teacher's guidelines or guidance, rather, we ended up suffering a little pain. That's exactly an analogy that I wanted to make this evening for you guys. God is a teacher. He doesn't want to see us, inflicting that pain. It's like this father here putting some protection on the outlet so that the child will not insert anything there. Whereas this child here is putting maybe a screwdriver, a flat screwdriver, inside the outlet. When you look at these things, it's really to remember us, as we learn through Spiritism, that God is the utmost teacher of our lives. And we should pay attention to the lessons. Flavio, but there's no lessons that God has given me. Oh, yeah, He has given a lot of lessons. Sometimes we forget to take a look at those lessons. And some of these lessons can be found in temples, in churches, in spiritist centers. Some of these lessons are taught to us by our parents. Some of these lessons are taught to us by our friends, by society, by laws, and so forth. But ultimately, the goal here is for us to progress, not to suffer. Eventually, if we don't follow the guidelines, if we don't follow the directions, we ended up suffering, very much so like a student that does not do the homework or the exercises. That student probably will not pass the year, will not graduate in that year, and will have to go again and do the same activities all over again. It's going to suffer because of the situation. It's going to suffer because all of his or her friends are going to go and graduate to the next level. He or she will stay behind. All that suffering, all that pain was caused by that individual. Albeit all of the directions, all of the guidelines, all the guidance that that student has received from teachers, from parents, from friends, get some study, do some homework, do some exercises, get better at this, train some of these, do some practice tests and all that. And that student refused to do all those things, suffering ends up happening. Correct? But going back to those sacrifices, which is still very common in a lot of religions throughout the world, Allan Kardec very wisely asked the immortal spirits, question 670, has God ever appreciated human sacrifices when offered with a sincere religious intention? So imagine this situation that we were here before. Oops, I think I went too fast. Situation where people were walking in their knees. Remember, right? They were going through those penitences, multiple kilometers, multiple miles, walking and suffering the pain, suffering the infliction, suffering sometimes the wounds of walking. Is God pleased? We know God is not pleased. But is there any benefits? Has there anything beyond these activities? That's what Allan Kardec very interestingly asked the spirits in question 970. Once we get there, again, or I'm sorry, 670, I should rather say, is there anything that God appreciates when we offer those things or those situations with a very sincere religious intention? And notice here, folks, that this is not a criticism on those activities. We fully respect what those folks are doing, but rather we would like to understand if there is a meaning, if there is an appreciation by God for those events, even if they were ultimately or genuinely, right, yeah, wrapped up with some religious intention. That's what Kardec is asking. And look at the answer the spirits gave Kardec. Never. But God always considers the intention that motivates any act. Never. But God always considers the intention that motivates any act. Not only those acts of penitence, but any acts that we do in our lives. The human race, or folks in general, in working on its own betterment, naturally came to realize its error and loathe the idea of sacrifices. Nobody likes sacrifices. If you're not a psychopath or a sociopath, chances are likely that we don't like sacrifices. We don't like suffering. We don't like pain. Correct? That's exactly why we have, medicines and, anti drugs of any kind that really soothes the pain and so forth. So we don't like pain. Most folks don't like pain unless there's something, imbalance in our lives. And then we realize that's not really the idea of sacrifice. We loathe on the idea of sacrifice, which should never have entered enlightened minds. So the more enlightened we get, the less connections we make with sacrifices. But the nugget of this answer is this: God always considers the intention that motivates any act. So, Flavio, you're telling me that even those penitences, as we learned, God is not really pleased with those. Is there a benefit of that person doing that? What we can understand is the benefit, yes, absolutely, because the moment that the person is walking in his or her knees throughout that longevity of the time, that person is thinking about either something that he or she got it as a gift or as a resource, or is asking for something to be received. So if we put all of our focus, all of our attention, all of our mindset in achieving something, and if that journey helps us get there, there's a benefit. Yeah, there's a benefit. But not so much so the benefit of us, you know, inflicting, pain or inflicting any sort of wounds or issues to our own bodies. That's actually contrary what we learned from Spiritism. 100% the opposite, right? So if you look at this in a way that we should be living to please God, absolutely, the same way as we as children live to please our parents. We remember, I used to love to make my mom happy or my dad happy. I used to love to do that. Either bring a flower home or help her with some activities, chores at home, maybe clean up some of the things in the house or whatnot, take care of the dishes. I used to love doing those things because she'll get happy and I'll be the beneficiary of her being happy because she'll treat me better, she'll do other things for me, and she'll cook, desserts for me later, things like that. So living to please God, yeah, we all do that to some extent. Some people more, some people less. But ultimately, if you ask the question, what else would please God if not than our inner improvement? What else would please God if not the overcoming all of our feelings of animosity against our fellow neighbors, our fellow folks? So the better we get, the more enlightened we become, the more moral advancement or development that we achieve. That's how God, as a parent, is going to be happy because God's going to look at us. Hey, great job! You're in the right path. Kudos to you here. Attaboy's there, and things like that. So that's the nugget of what we're trying to say here. So the sacrifice that's most agreeable to God, right? It's exactly the one that makes us better. And just penitence is not going to make us better. It's going to make us worse in reality because we're going to get all wounded with some pain. We won't be able to walk for a few days. A lot of things won't go in the right way. So the gist of the message here is such that we have to move away from some of the Old Testament animal sacrifices because the penitence really comes from the Old Testament teachings where the Jewish offerings were such in a way that if somebody committed a sin, for example, if somebody forgot to do something or if something really went away from the Torah's teaching, that person had to go to the synagogue and pay the penitence and pay some tributes. And there was a lot of animal offerings. We no longer have that. The Judaism, right, as a religion, no longer accepts that. But there were two types of sacrifices that were found in the Old Testament. That's how it ripples until these dates with a slightly different methodology. But if you look at, for example, in the past, there were burnt offering, peace offering, or meat offering. They used to kill lambs or sheep and bring to the temple to be cooked for the rabbis and other folks, right? As a ceremony of, hey, I made a mistake. I did this to so and so. Let me bring that animal so we can cook and eat together in a way to bring those two together to make amends or to work it out. The animal was just a subterfuge, was just an excuse for that conversation to take place, for that act of forgiveness, either forgiving or asking for forgiveness to take place. And obviously, there were some obligatory offerings every time somebody committed a sin or every time somebody trespassed, right, against somebody else or the property or whatnot. They were obliged to make that offering. So the idea of penitence, the idea of us suffer in order to make God happy, comes from the Old Testament, which we respect because back in the days, that's what we needed. But right now, we know better. Right now, we've learned through Spiritism that we don't need to do that. Absolutely not. Because when Jesus came, he didn't come to destroy the law, he came to fulfill it, but to fulfill it with different meaning. And these were Jesus' words. Let's read them up. I'm sorry, in a minute. So when you look at Jesus, what he told us, any and all sacrifices were just of a spiritual matter. Just of a spiritual manner. When Jesus asked us to go back and reconvene with your neighbor, to do this, or to ask for forgiveness, or to do that, all these sacrifices that he asked us to do were not physical sacrifices. He himself went to the cross to be sacrificed and all that as an example of love for us, but not an example for us to follow in a way that we should do all these things that happened to him in order for us to. No, that's not what he's trying to do. So when we look at some of these signs, and Kardec once again asked a very, very interesting question to the immortal spirits. Through what signs can we recognize in individuals the real progress that will raise them within the spirit hierarchy? So Kardec is asking, okay, if I'm getting better here, if I'm doing this there, if I'm being a little more less selfish here, if I'm forgiving more there, if I'm being a better brother here, if I'm being a better wife there, what are the signs that I can see that's going to make me really progress in the spirit hierarchy? That's what he's asking in a nutshell. And the interesting thing here is that the answer is very, very, very poignant. The spirits say, I quote, they're not vindictive. Following Jesus' example, they forgive offenses and only remember benefits because they know what they will be forgiven as they have forgiven. Let's dissect this. When Jesus asked us to forgive, he was giving us the most interesting teaching, or the most interesting yet important teaching throughout the gospel. Because to forgive is to really get better. To forgive is to be better than we were before. To forgive is to go against all odds. Because society is asking us to do what? It's asking us to retaliate. It's asking us to be vindictive. It's asking us to go look for your rights and do this and do that. Obviously, we have to do what's right for us. But when Jesus told us, forgive your brother, forgive your sister. And when Allan Kardec gets this answer, he really complements Jesus' teachings because if you remember the question, through what signs can we recognize in individuals the real progress? And in their real progress, they'll raise them into the spirit hierarchy. We can say, oh yeah, this person is in the right path. That person is making all the right choices. What are the signs? So, first one, they're not vindictive. If something happens to them, they don't look for revenge. They don't look for vendetta. They don't. They're not vindictive. They follow Jesus' example that suffered so much, that was persecuted, was, people went after him and he did not really retaliate any of those things. They forgive offenses and only remembers benefits. Folks, I don't know about you, but when somebody offends me, it's very difficult to only remember benefits. Correct? It's very difficult. But that's a sign that these people already got it. They got the meaning of life because they know that they will be forgiven as they have forgiven. Meaning, if we want to be forgiven for all of our sins, all of our wrongdoings, we must forgive. That's the only way out. So let me give you a couple of interesting examples. One, obviously, on the left, we've just celebrated, less than actually a month ago today, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, which was a terrible, terrible situation. I'm sure the whole world agrees that there was a terrible situation that we had to endure. But instead of forgiving, what were the decisions made? We had to endure. Oops. Okay, I heard my voice again. Anyways, so 20 years ago, when we saw that, instead of forgiving and using the situation with a learning component, we retaliated. The world retaliated to what happened to be the longest war that the United States has ever been. 20 years. Multiple soldiers ended up discarnating because of a war. And politics apart, we should have forgiven back then. Because, these things, we have to forgive. That's the message that we heard from Jesus over and over again. Forgive, forgive, forgive. Let me give you another example. That's this young lady. Her name is Kaylee Harriet. And back in 2003, she was a 3-year-old girl playing in her porch in Dorchester, Boston. So here in our backyard, pretty much. She was playing, and then a stray bullet hit her spine, hit her back. So Kaylee Harriet was taken care of. Paramedics arrived, and she became paraplegic. She lost her abilities to walk. But one thing that she said 2 years after, when she was 5 years old, she had a chance to say something to Anthony, the perpetrator who shot that bullet. Of course, he didn't mean to shoot her. It was a stray bullet. He was involved in some activities in the city, and then she said, "Anthony, I forgive you." So I'm gonna try to play a clip. I'm hoping that's gonna play. Maybe Mackenzie could help me here with some technologies, but let's see what happens. This is in 2018 when she graduated from high school. She still forgave the man who caused that to her. So when she was 5 years old, that's the paramedic who helped her. And now she's attending University of Arizona, studying animal science, and she wants to become a veterinarian to help animals. So that's a situation of someone 3 years old, folks. 3 years old. She got hit by a stray bullet. She lost her movements. She couldn't walk. She won't be able to walk anymore her entire life. When she was 5, she told the man that caused that, I forgive you. I know you didn't mean it. What you did was still wrong, still not good. She said that. What you did was still wrong, but I still forgive you. So that's the message that when we hear Jesus telling us, the message that should resonate with all of us. Because now, when we read Jesus' words, for you, for if you forgive man their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. That's in Matthew chapter 5, verse 48. And folks, let's be honest to ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. We all have made terrible mistakes in the past. This, as we learned through Spiritism, this incarnation, this is our best self. If we look back, that's a much worse Flavio before. This is our best version 20.0, 200 point whatever. This is the best version of ourselves, which means we've made some terrible mistakes in the past. Some of them we have probably worked out of them, and some of them it's still for us to work on in the future. And if we want and if we need our Heavenly Father and Mother God to forgive us, we have to forgive others. That's a calling that's being given to us every single day. To forgive when somebody crosses our path in the middle of the highway. Instead of telling that person to go do something else, we say, no, my brother, go in peace. You must be in a hurry, maybe late for a wife that's giving birth to your child. I have no idea. Just go with peace. Go in peace. Or maybe when somebody mocks us at work, or when one of our difficult relative, says something wrong about us, let's not retaliate. Let's not be vindictive. Let's not look for these activities that puts us against that order, the spirit hierarchy that Allan Kardec got the answer from the immortal spirits. Let's do things that makes us better, not things that brings our past. Vindictive, being revengeful, and look for, I want to be even with that. No, that's not going to get us anywhere. So when you look at that, there are a lot of benefits that forgiveness has. And forgiveness is tightly connected with evolution. The more we forgive, the better or the more evolved we become. Emmanuel, the spirit guide, talks about this in several of his books. For example, forgiveness is the best vaccine against hate disease. Forgiveness is the best peace formula. Forgiveness generates the greatest profit. Forgive others and sleep in peace. Because we're not going to be, oh, that person did this to me. What am I going to do to get rid? No, it happened. We can't go back. We cannot go back. What we can do is change our future. We can't change our past, rather. So, once again, the sacrifice that's most agreeable or most pleasurable to God is that sacrifice that really makes us better people, better humans. Would the words first be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift? That's the gospel reading. Jesus teaches us what's most agreeable to God is the sacrifice of our resentments. And that before asking for any pardon, folks. Any pardon, folks should first have pardoned others and make good any damage caused to their fellow beings. Meaning, if you're asking for forgiveness, wait a second. Before you ask, go and make amends with that person that you offended, that you said some bad things, or that you did this, or go, make peace with so and so. Go change your behavior as you treated somebody else. When we do this assessment to our lives, things start to change. Things, or our sacrifices, emotional, spiritual, psychological ones, start to make sense. And they are the ones that God agrees are the most important ones. That's why these are really pragmatic lessons on forgiveness. Because to say, yeah, I forgive, it's very easy. But you put that in practice, it's very difficult. Very, very, very difficult. But it's not impossible. And allow me to tell you a story that happened in the beginning of the last century, beginning of 1900s, yeah. So 20th century, in what we know now to be Armenia as the country. So the Ottoman Empire were trying to extend its its dominance in Europe, and the Ottoman Empire was conquering Armenia. In this particular situation, they were looking for a farm that sit high in a hill, because that farm had a good visibility of the valley, and they could really see if other troops were coming in and whatnot. So they went to this house, and this commander, this captain by the time, went in, and they saw the family, and this family had a couple that were working in the land, and a brother and a sister, like two kids, two adolescent kids back then. What they did, or what this captain did, was very atrocious. He saw this beautiful young lady, and he raped her in front of her parents. Then he killed her brother, because her brother tried to, resist what was happening. After killing her brother, he killed the parents, the little girl's parents, and then the little girl was by herself. He took her to be his sexual slave for many years after that. Eventually, she was able to escape, and she escaped, and she, went on with her life. And then she became a nurse. She was able to. She was, taken care of by a family. She went to school and became a nurse. The war went on, multiple decades. The war went on. This is what we call today the Armenian genocide. 1.5 million people were killed during those activities for multiple decades. And then this nurse was in the hospital, and one day they said, "Nurse, nurse, there's an officer, a military officer, who needs a lot of help, and we really need someone 20th century to take care of him 24/7, and you're the only one that can do that." So what does she do? She took an amazing care of that individual, of that military officer. Throughout weeks, she was caring for him, she was attending to him, she was helping, she was caring, nursing, and really helping him recover from the wounds, and all the difficulties and all that. Eventually, he recovered. Eventually, he got better, and he was discharged from the hospital. Now he was a general. He was no longer a captain. He was a general now. Then he went to the nurse's, chief, to say, "I want to say thank you for taking good care of me." And the nurse, chief said, and the nurse lead said, "No, no, no, don't thank me. You should thank that nurse right there, because she was the one who took care of you. She took care of you in the same way as she would have taken care of a family member, because she was here sleeping on your side to ensure that you were receiving the best possible and exceptional care 24/7. So he goes to thank the nurse. He goes, "Hey, I want to say thank you for caring for me and all that." And then she said, "No, don't worry about it. I'm glad that you're better and you recovered. You can go on with your life." And then he realized that he remembered that voice. And then he said, "Do I know you?" And she goes, "Yes, you know me really well." And then he remembered. When he remembered, he stopped and asked her, "Why didn't you let me die?" after all I've done to you? You could have just let me die. Why did you take care of me the way you did? And in an act like this, she said, opening up her arms, saying, because that one whom I follow taught me to forgive no matter what. That whom I follow taught me to forgive no matter what, opening up her arms. Folks, when we look at examples of this, which by the way, it's told in this book amazingly called Unconditional Love by Pastor Brian Zand, the call of Jesus to radical forgiveness. There's several examples of radical forgiveness. But I want to believe that all of us, or most of us, don't have to really make amends or to really uh, resonate with radical forgiveness. Most of us only need to forgive much smaller things than what this Armenian nurse had to forgive. Nevertheless, as we follow Jesus, as Pastor Brian Zen liked to say, the most important message that Jesus has left for all of us is the lesson of forgiveness. Because without forgiveness, we won't go further. Without forgiveness, we won't go further. If you look at Kardec, that said, without charity, there's no salvation. Forgiveness is embedded into charity. Because one part of charity is to forgive all of our offenses, to be good to others. Yes, absolutely, right? We have to be good to others. We have to forgive our offenses. And you also have to be indulgent to people's shortcomings. Those three things together is what really describes charity. So forgiveness is included in charity. As we learn through Spiritism, we have to be charitable. We have to practice charity. So as we learn, the most the most important sacrifice that we can ever do, that's going to be agreeable, that's going to be pleasing, that's going to be really helping us towards God or through our conversation with God, is really working in our own moral, spiritual enlightenment. It's to really practice forgiveness no matter what. It's to be charitable. And to really, those sacrifices are really emotional sacrifices, spiritual sacrifices. That's what Jesus told us. That's what he taught us. So I truly hope that we don't have to wait until a radical forgiveness opportunity knocks our doors. We have many opportunities to forgive every single day, all the time. And the more we do it, the easier it becomes. It's like going to the gym. The more you go to the gym, the easier it becomes to go to the gym. The easier it gets to go to the gym because your muscles starts to play, correct? So forgiveness is like a muscle. Let's start with smaller things. Let's get better with forgiving smaller and small things. And then eventually we'll get better at forgiving big things. So I truly hope that this message has helped, has really changed our concept a little bit, as opposed to really hurting ourselves, as opposed to really going after penitences, as opposed to, no. Sacrifice, in a way that we learn through Spiritism, is not a painful one, should not be a painful one. The sacrifice that, again, it's most agreeable to God, or that the God's going to look at us, you know what? Yes, this person is doing this person is doing that. It's the work, the very difficult work to connect our minds with our hearts. To really look at those, everyone that we talk to, we interact as really brothers and sisters. Because we are siblings, as we know. But it's very difficult to look at those that are different than us, those that don't think like we do, those that have different opinions like from ours, those that have different political views than we do. They're still our siblings. And we still have to forgive them. We still have to work with our moral compass to be better friends, better, support more, help more, really get to a better destination. That's the message that we learn. And that's the message that Spiritism really removes the blur from our eyes, that before we thought that sacrifices had to be physical. Rather, now, as we learn differently, these sacrifices are emotional, are spiritual, are the real sacrifices. Because guess what? They make us better people. Thank you so much for your attention. And I don't know what's the next activity, but once again, hope this has been helpful. And thank you so much for your attention, your kindness. And as usual, just look us up on social media if you could ever be of any help. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Flavio, once again. That I already put the book in my list. I just added to my list there to look for it because these kinds of stories, I mean, can help us really understand, like the way you showed here, what Jesus wanted from us. When we see someone doing it, like she did, it's just so powerful and that's so beautiful. And when we know that, we gives us this boost of okay, so let's try once again. So I added the book, and hopefully people saw the name of the book. I left it there for a little while so that who is watching online um, can see it later. But the book is Unconditional with a question mark at the end, and from Brian Zand. So it's not hard to find. I just typed it and it popped up right away. So thank you for all the things that you said, and this story at the end really wraps up this sacrifice. Thank you. I know it was not a sacrifice for you to come here, but thank you. Just a little, right? Okay. So with this, let's do our prayer, and before that, just like to remind, like I said in the beginning, every second Monday of the month we have a meeting in English here, but all the other Mondays we have regular meetings in Portuguese, and we don't know who will be here in November or December, but stay tuned. The Monday nights regular Portuguese are not meetings are not online, but every Saturday we have a meeting. Our meetings are online on YouTube and Facebook as well. So this in 2 weeks from now, we're gonna have a friend from New York coming here. Sergio Soares will come to talk to us about the gospel, about the message of Jesus too. Next this week, we're gonna talk about a little bit about Paul and Stephen and the study that we're doing here in the group. It will be not a lecture itself; it will be more like a conversational study this weekend. So if you want to come. If you want to watch online, it will be online too. And write it down. Write something to us. We may have a way to write the questions, and people can participate as well. We're trying to make this as interactive as possible, not only for people here but also for people online too. So it will be this next Saturday. And I would like to remind everyone of what we call the gospel at home in Portuguese, or God at home, as some people prefer in English. So it's that meeting where we gather together with the family at a certain date and time every week, the same date and time every week, so that we can read a message, gather together around a good message, be it from one of these books like the one that we read in the beginning, Our Daily Bread, or you can open up the Bible if you like to read the Bible, or the Gospel according to Spiritism. But the idea is to gather together and to bring this some reflection, not for the other, but for us, right? So if we create this discipline of reading or studying every week, it is important for us as it is as well. We know that when we all think about the same good things or the same bad things, we attract good energies or bad energies. So if we are doing the God at home thinking about goodness. We're inviting the good spirits to us, like Flavio started saying here right at the beginning, when we have two or three people around. Jesus is with us. And what does that mean? It means that when we do it, our neighborhood benefits from it, right? So as we are doing it here, right? When we get here, it's so calm and so peaceful, so quiet, spiritually speaking, because we are always gathering to talk about Jesus and the good things. And it's good that we have the Spiritist Center here, and above us there's an evangelical church. So it's not all the time, but you can imagine how much light we have, being invited at least to be here in the neighborhood. So it is with the gospel at home is the same idea. We we are inviting the good spirits to be there with us and help everybody around. So with this, let's finish our meeting with another prayer, thanking God for once again for the opportunity of being incarnated, that He gave life to us and allowed us to experience life once again, so that we can leave our mistakes behind and make the efforts to be a better person. So thank you, God, for once again the opportunity of being here. Thanks for the message of the night, for the good reflections that were shared with us. And may these blessings that we feel now also be felt by the spirits that are here, that we all, as your sons and daughters, be united in thought at least, in thinking about the goodness that we should share to the world, because all that you share with us is for the goodness of everybody. So thank you for allowing us to see this and for helping us understand that we need to do our part in the creation. Bless us and be with us always. So be it. So that's it, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Flavio, for coming once again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone online. And hopefully, we will see each other very, very soon.